Hi, for this Think for a Change video, I'm going to be temporarily joined by my cat Oliver. You might remember him from the Meaning of Life video that we did a long while back. But so this morning, what I want to talk about is something called the hermeneutic horizon. It's a concept that I found to be very helpful when I'm talking with my students about new things that they haven't been thinking about before. So in a lot of ways it's about like how do we learn to see ethical moments and ethical decisions that we make all the time that we maybe weren't aware of that we were making, or how do we have the certain status quo, and how can we change it? Well, there are possibilities before us all the time in which we can change our actions, our behaviors, or our values and assumptions that we might not be aware of. Okay, he wants to go. So, the hermeneutic horizon I find to be very, very helpful for explaining how and why it's important for us to discuss certain things philosophically so that we can understand better how and when we might change our behaviors or our attitudes. So, the example of the hermeneutic horizon, well, I've talked about horizons before too, but hermeneutics is a kind of like field of interpretation and understanding, and so the hermeneutic horizon can be thought of like this. You have a horizon before you, and something gets introduced into this field of vision. So now what wasn't there before has now been explicitly noted and attended to so that you are more attuned to seeing it. And then when you put your attention to it, then you can work on your understanding and think through it and everything. But you have to basically see it before you can understand it. So the example that I give is one of sparkly Uggs. In this college town that I live in, there are a lot of Ugg boots around. People wear Ugg boots all over the place. And when I say to my students, we know that people wear their Ugg boots, right? Well, guess what? There's also such a thing called the sparkly Ugg. And these sparkly Ugg boots are gold and silver and blue, but they're just sequined disco ball-like boots that people wear around this town a lot. And when my students are shocked to hear that they're sparkly Ugg boots, I say, hold on, now that you know, now that I've mentioned it, you'll start seeing them. And sure enough, someone takes a picture of an Ugg boot, sparkly Uggs, like within a day and posts it to our class Facebook group. So the thing that's happening here isn't that you're looking for them, it's just that you become more sensitive to the perception of them. And it's not that we've created sparkly Ugg boots either, like they're always around, it's just that we didn't notice them before. Another way to think about this is that, like, if you have a friend who's talking about maybe moving to Colorado, and then they start talking about Colorado a lot, then you start seeing maybe Colorado license plates or Colorado flag paraphernalia all over the place, or whatever. Like, suddenly you're aware that, like, even though I'm on the East Coast, there's Colorado stuff all around me. And the other example that I like to give is one that's very familiar. When you meet a new friend on Facebook, say, and then you start, looking through 10, 20 or all their pictures, just to get to know them. And then, eventually down the road, you meet another person who happens to be mutual friends with your first Facebook friend. And you start to look at, 10, 20 or all of their photos, and you realize that that second person was in the first person's photos all along, but you didn't know that because, like, who are they? You didn't understand that they were a person. It sounds really bad. Because you just hadn't met them yet. Like, they weren't in your intelligible consciousness, So anyway, that's one of those like, oh wow, how have I not been seeing this person all along when I'm looking at the first person's photos? Okay, so hopefully now you can see how this applies, that when we have a kind of deliberate conversation or understanding where like certain issues are raised to be salient issues that we should pay attention to, now we can start seeing them more easily. So it happens with, like, if people say like, oh, I don't think that there's anybody racist, well, suddenly you start seeing like, well, if we start talking about racism, there are instances of racism all around, and that becomes now finally a problem that we can identify because we're aware and open to understanding it a little bit better. Or for instance, if someone says, well, I don't know any gay people, well, maybe you do. In fact, you probably do, quite a few, and you just don't know yet that you're surrounded by gay people all the time. So then that could maybe change like your thoughts and attitudes about gay people. Maybe they're not the monsters that you think they are. Or, vice versa, whatever. This applies to a lot of different situations. It can apply to understanding the prevalence of rape statistics and why maybe we don't see it because nobody thinks that they're a rapist. Or we could also think about it in terms of, like we're doing in my class right now, healthcare and medical ethics, and like what happens with advertising when suddenly everybody thinks that they've got restless leg syndrome or something, or that they're depressed because now we've been told that there's this thing called depression and you might have it and everybody's got it. So anyway, it gets complicated, but I hope that the hermeneutic horizon is a helpful concept for you too, to start thinking about how we can relate and turn our attention to very important issues so that we can see that there are moments, I find this very empowering, there are moments before us all the time that we just typically overlook, that we could do things differently in. So that's why I think the hermeneutic horizon is helpful, that's why I think that philosophy is worth studying, and that's why I think you should talk to your friends about things that go outside of your frame of reference. Thanks for watching the Thanks for a Change videos. I've got more coming on the way. See ya.